We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young, and today we are joined by a very special guest from the state of Michigan. Her name is Jessica Golich. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on today.
Jimmy, thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor.
I think that's great. I love it when you say that to me. Thank you. You can keep saying it. No, I'm only kidding. Seriously, tell me about Michigan, because they are one of the newer adult use recreational legal cannabis states. And how involved were you in the actual law being established? Can you give me a little history about you and cannabis in Michigan?
Yeah, so fortunately, I am just now beginning to get into legislation and educating myself through sharing social content and working with different organizations on ensuring that all regulations apply to every single area of cannabis becoming legal. And as you said, with Michigan, now that we are legal and recreationally legal, I am working with SkyMint, as you can see here, to help promote their brand and their mission. And fortunately, their mission coalesces with Last Prisoner Project. And with me being an ambassador for Last Prisoner Project, it just came about like synergistically, and everything is just working forward to pushing SkyMint's mission, which is beyond just selling a product. It's selling value, it's selling soul, it's selling a lot of territory that hasn't been covered in the cannabis industry.
And it's fascinating to me that the people in the industry continue to be so passionate about the injustices that a lot of people have had to put up with over the history of it being a banned substance in the United States since 1937. And, we both share the respect for Steve D'Angelo and his Last Prisoner Project. But I want to go back again to Michigan itself. Can you walk me through how long a struggle it was? Because when I was reading up about Michigan and their fight for legalization, I know that Ann Arbor, which is, of course, where the University of Michigan is, where the big house is, because as you know, everything relates to sports with me. Ann Arbor was really, I think, the driving area.
Oh, yeah.
Getting it legalized, correct? Not just, and by the way, not just in the last few years, but like for decades, correct?
Way back. You think of hash bash. So hash bash has been going on every single year. And in the midst of hash bash, that being legal and that being able to celebrate the gift of the plant in that general vicinity created the traction for us to celebrate it throughout the state of Michigan. And for us to be able, I believe Hash Fest was the early 90s. Have you ever been?
Can I tell you, there's been something similar to that in Boston for 30 years, and I've only been to the last 2. So the answer to your question is no, I've never been to Michigan for any reason. So yeah.
I know Michigan though, like when you think about where you want to travel, people don't necessarily just perk up and say Michigan, but I think now, especially in the cannabis industry, there's a lot of opportunity for travel as well because of recreational use. And in regards to Hash Bash, I remember going when I was a junior in high school, when I was a freshman in high school, celebrating the plant then, and to see it elevate and see storefronts throughout Michigan is so fascinating.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's almost like you pinch yourself. I'm in a legal state of Massachusetts. We've talked about this. And the fact that I can talk about a legal plant, cannabis, that has been part of my life for 39 of the 62 years I've been on Earth, it's just, I pinch myself too. I said, I cannot believe that we have made this kind of progress in my lifetime. I never thought, by the way, Never thought I'd see the Red Sox win a World Series, the Patriots win 6, the Celtics win another, and the Bruins win another. But that's another story, as you know. But I do want to go back to you, and I do want to hear more about your story, because they call you the triple threat, Jessica. Are you comfortable with that moniker, the triple threat?
Yeah, I am. And I wouldn't say necessarily a threat. The value that I bring of having the different tools and skills that have allowed me a lot of opportunity and experience. So my story is I began in 2016 responding to a Craigslist ad. I saw a Craigslist ad looking for a music journalist in the state of Michigan. My curiosity piqued. I was able to get the position without a journalism degree, without any formal experience whatsoever. And in through doing so, I had the opportunity to ask for building out a music section on that major publication. They allowed me to do so, and I was able to take it global. And the reason why I was able to take it global was because of the relationships that I've built, which I always, when people ask me about building a brand, building value, building a business, it always turns back to the relationship that you're building.
And relationships come with every business deal that you get involved with. Some are better than others, and we've all learned from our relationship mistakes, I think both personally and in business, but that is the circle of life, and that's the journey that we all are on, right, Jessica?
Yeah, and that's part of evolution as well. I think that the times that I have faltered within business relationships, they've all been opportunities for growth that I've taken into my relationships now. And through those relationships that I built in 2016, I went on for about 2 years. And fortunately, I made it all the way to Coachella, which is the biggest music festival in the world. And being able to cover that really sparked something in me, knowing that I developed a skill set to create my own publication and take this entrepreneurial route. And it took me about 6 months from there, and I did.
Now, Coachella, and again, I admit it, okay, late to the party. Even though I've been partying most of my life, I've been late to the cannabis advocacy party.
I can tell that you've been partying your whole life.
I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not, but
in a good way, yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Bringing good energy to the table, and I could tell that you mingle and definitely have partaken in many different adventures.
Yeah, no question about it. It's just life, and I've had a lot of good stories that some I can tell, some I share with others when I'm a guest on a podcast, not when I'm hosting my own podcast. But that's another. But let's go back to the triple talent. It's not a threat. It's a triple talent that you have.
Thank you. That's a perfect way to put it.
Photography, music, and I threw politics in because you are truly someone who espouses the benefits of the cannabis sativa plant on a regular basis, right?
On a daily basis, yeah, because I look at it so medicinally, and I look at it as how it has affected me internally and who I've transformed into, and now it's become a social responsibility. And social responsibility is so beyond personal. It's about having the clear consensus without society, and we have to continue to carve that through our brands and through our mission and through our voices.
No question. And you do this through the lens of a camera, too. I did look through your portfolio online, and I got to tell you, so I'm reading all these names, and I admit, I know who Lady Gaga is, okay? I've met Justin Timberlake, so I knew who he was. Well, he was 19 when I met him, when he was with NSYNC, and I was, needless to say, a lot younger as well. But beyond that, I recognize Snoop Dogg. I got him. But beyond that, Eminem, I think I recognized him. But there's quite a few on there that only my son, who also is your age, pretty much, has enlightened me to. Incubus, and I don't even know half the people you took pictures of. But how much fun is it when you get to look at these celebrities, these talents, through the lens of a camera? And then the technical question is, every photographer wants to know, what camera do you use?
You know what's funny is that I use the base Canon camera. I use literally a $400 body, but I have a better lens for it. And through doing so, I have used my editing skills to create better photos. I have never believed that it's the tool that you typically need. There are many tools throughout the photography industry that do help enhance the photography, but it's also my vision that drives it home. It's one of a kind.
No question about it, and you certainly capture the personalities of a lot of the musicians on stage that you've shot, and I recommend people going to your website. You might as well give a quick plug to the website. Go ahead, Jessica.
Definitely. I own Life Beyond the Music. That is my music publication, and you could check out all my photos there.
Life Beyond the Music. How did you come up with that title? Because it is so fitting for your talent, ability, and reputation, it sounds like.
Thank you. Yeah. So over the years, I recognized that I was building these strong relationships with publicists throughout the music industry because of how uncanny the interviews I were conducting had become. And what I was always diving into was beyond the typical press run. I'm sure that you've interviewed everybody. So through doing so, you're getting these press releases all the time, and you typically probably scan through and get a gist of them and are ready to go. And that is how that's how I do it as well. but I always made sure that throughout the interviews, I completely dove into who they are as a human being. So for instance, let's say, this is a good example. I was at Coachella and it was an in-person interview. I didn't expect it, but it was on the spot. But it was a band called X Japan. Have you heard of them?
No.
Okay. So it doesn't matter. Their drummer is Yoshiki, and he's created all the music for like the Oscars, like tons of big award shows. He's a multi-instrumentalist, and he's brilliant. Even seeing him, I was like, wow. But having the opportunity to interview him in person, we connected intimately because I brought up the human element of him. He's more accustomed to always living through the lens of being the guy that made like the major award show songs. Diving into who he was as a human created that energy that made me recognize that I have this gift and I can take this further if I do it right.
And actually, what you don't realize is you already figured out the insight, the secrets to a good interview. And God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And this comes from someone who's a talk show host for a long time, okay? We are supposed to listen twice as much as we speak, because listening is by far the most important skill of any interviewer. Because I can prepare notes and do all this sort of preparation and due diligence before we talk, but listening to the person who you're talking to is the most important. And I will admit, as a male, I am certainly challenged in that department, because sometimes when I'm not interviewing someone with the red light on, let's just say my brain shuts off a little bit. I focus when I need to focus. You understand that, don't you?
I totally do. And I definitely, dialing back to listening being the key component, it truly is. Because I think that is very palpable too once you're in the midst of an interview to the artist. And now, having been on the other end of it as talent, I also recognize that when others are listening to me, it makes me more amped to give more.
Where do you want Life is Music? Where do you want yourself to go as far as influencing the world over the next 5 years, 10 years?
So with Life Beyond the Music, that is the music publication. I haven't really incorporated the cannabis aspect, and I've used my social media network for that. And I look forward to hopefully in time incorporating that. But I know that my mission with cannabis is at my heart, and that is number one for me right now, no matter what. And luckily, I've recently built up my network with some key players in the cannabis industry, and I'm hoping to have my own TV show in the near future.
Ooh, well, I think I know someone who might be willing to work with you or even perhaps produce that with you if you're interested.
I think I know someone too.
Well, that's great, because you have the look, you have the passion, you have the energy. You speak in sound bites too, Jessica. That's something you can't teach people, because a lot of people like to just go off and pontificate. And by the way, I have that issue myself. It helps when you record yourself, play it back, and force yourself to watch yourself, because that is a great teaching tool. I bet you already figured that out.
I've never used that tip. That's a really good tip that I'm going to use.
Well, there you go. And now we just shared it with your whole army of people who follow you. So that's okay too, because I'm all about giving back. One of the things I also saw about you that intrigued me is someone who is as young as you, and you are exactly half my age. I just want to say, if people have already filled this in, they could figure that one out. You are passionate about the importance of a citizen's right to vote, and especially galvanizing young people. As a college professor myself, one of the things I talk about to that classroom of 18, 19, 20-year-old young people is you have to vote. They take it for granted a lot of times. They say, why should I vote if I can't go buy liquor or anything or even weed legally because I'm not 21, but I can vote? And you try to explain to them why it is so important to cast that ballot. And actually, it's the act of freedom that this country was actually built on.
And I think right now that freedom is stifling, and it's stifling each individual personally. And through that stifling, it's going to create a result in November that I'm hoping will transform our country. I really feel as though the youth vote is going to be a key component in this upcoming election, and influencing them is going to take social influencers like me. I read a great article from a trusted source recently, and it said that 70% of social media consumers are more likely to trust influencers and celebrities. I think that it's more or less because we bring that human element and showcase that we're normal day-to-day people as well. And we want to influence you to do the right thing so you can live a better future. Whether you're 18, whether you're 21, if you're 18 and you're concerned about not being able, Jimmy, that totally is a concern, not being able to buy alcohol, not being able to buy recreational cannabis, that you're still voting for your rights that can change over the next 4 to 5 years. So you're still influencing your own future while influencing the entire world. And right now, our country is at such a critical turning point. And in November, that transformative change of someone being out of office will create a lot of opportunity in the cannabis industry as well.
Yeah, I don't like to mention his name either, just for the record. I could call him POTUS, but even that gives him far more respect than he deserves as a human being.
He doesn't deserve any SEO hits, nothing. He has enough, and he's had enough publicity. And I think that being candid in your approach of working a way around it with words, and as a journalist, that comes with the territory, it's helpful to influencing others to making the best decision for themselves.
No question. And I was a little spoiled because at 18 in 1975, again, you people who are watching, do the math, okay? It was legal. The drinking age when I was growing up was 18. And then when I turned 21 in Massachusetts, it changed to 21. So God has always been looking out after me, I guess, in some capacity. That being said, I still maintain that it is education of our youth about these adult products, liquor, alcohol, that's the same thing, beer, liquor, all those things, cannabis, and the most abused drug in our society that nobody ever mentions is caffeine. It's caffeine. You take caffeine, you make caffeine illegal in this country, that's going to change a lot of people's attitudes, let's just say.
Because a lot of people are subconsciously dependent on it too. Personally, I haven't had caffeine in well over a year, and it's transformed my daily processes and allowed me a deeper rest. And I think people don't realize that when they're ingesting it and taking it through many different forms. And the soda, pop, that is poison that you're literally putting in your system. I to each their own, but through doing so, you're creating a lot of long-term damage in your body.
Yeah, well, I am going to be leaving my body to science, and that will happen a lot sooner than you, I hope. That being said, I grew up on Coca-Cola, Mountain Dew, because it had a lot of caffeine in it. Needless to say, these are drinks that have sugar, but I've been blessed with a metabolism that I weigh the same as I did when I was 18, 19, 20 years old. And I don't know why that is, but let someone figure that out in an autopsy after I'm gone or something like that, because it is an amazing thing that I can sleep immediately, and all my blood work always comes back normal. People think I'm normal, but anybody who knows me knows that is not true, okay? I have a very strong personality, and I'm not afraid to share my experiences with others, and I'm very self-aware of both my positives and negative traits. So,
That in itself is so powerful. Being self-aware, period, and self-aware of both your opportunities for growth and your positive traits only makes you a more embodied human being.
Well, I appreciate that. Let's get back to a few of the issues that are in our hands as citizens of this country. And it is amazing to me that cannabis now has become a negotiating platform, an issue between the two governing parties in our government, the Republicans and the Democrats. And, it just goes to show you that when you put any kind of a divisive situation in front of people, everybody wants to pick sides instead of looking for a solution. And I think the cannabis community...
And I think scientific solution as well, rather than personal belief.
100%. Well, science has driven this argument to the point where you have cannabis involved with COVID-19 bailout bills in Washington, D.C. And of course, they've stalled because the Republicans are using that word as a deal breaker. They don't even want to have anything to do with it moving forward to help out the public. And we're talking about public safety. We're talking about public health. This is a plant, a product that has been put on this earth to engage with the balance of the immune system and the neurotransmitters in all of us, that endocannabinoid system.
In so many ways, heal mentally, emotionally, physically, internally. And what's funny is that I look at that from the Republican end as a push on ensuring that big pharma continues to remain funded. And that is unfortunate because that is continuing to lessen our opportunity to bring this forward federally.
And it's also behind that typical Washington tactic of, oh, FDA, it's your responsibility. Oh, no, DEA, it's your responsibility. Oh, no. Well, when it comes to hemp, you guys can handle that, but when it comes to cannabis sativa with THC, no, you guys are going to have to handle that, as opposed to just looking at it as a plant and looking at the benefits of it. It's a blame game that's going on in Washington, D.C., and no one gets anywhere by pointing fingers at each other, and it really bothers me.
Lack of education for those as well, and lack of personal, you think. There's a lack of personal experience as well, whether they've used the plant in the 1960s or today. As you know, I talked to my father about this candidly. My dad is a huge cannabis connoisseur, and he has educated me throughout my entire life. And he has told me how the plant has transformed and changed in so many different ways, and the way that it affects him is through ingesting it. That is not being discussed in the courtroom when it needs to be discussed. And that is not being discussed with the people who need to discuss it to bring this forward as an opportunity for more patients around the world to soak up the benefits.
I want to ask you about your upbringing with your dad. When was the first time, what year did he actually either introduce you to it or talk to you about it? How old were you at that time?
So my dad was an entrepreneur as well. He owned his own business called Johnny's Bar. He launched it with my grandfather, who was getting ready to get drafted to the Yankees, to the Chicago Cubs, is it? I'm not a big baseball.
Well, it's either the Cubs or the White Sox in Chicago, so you pick one.
I'm pretty sure it's the Cubs, but he was in the midst of getting drafted and wasn't able to fall through. Therefore, they launched the bar. My dad did that there. I knew what was going on as a kid, that my dad was using marijuana and cannabis back then, but he didn't really introduce it to me formally until I hit my early 20s. And through doing so, we've had such great experiences and conversations and moments of education from his past. So it's good to see from me firsthand now as a cannabis influencer and learn through him through his personal experience with cannabis.
Right. And so it's interesting that you still waited until you were in your early 20s, which I think is great, very commendable. One of the things that I talk about all the time to parents, especially parents of young people, is you really have an opportunity to have these conversations with your children at age 12, 13, and 14, because it's at that age that the kids want to grow up really fast and want to check out what those adults are doing, because they want to be treated like adults. They're recognizing the differences between being a little kid and a teenager through transitions. And it's a great opportunity for parents to talk to the kids about sex, drugs, rock and roll, alcohol, all of the caffeine, all the things.
Those things that pique curiosity, because those curiosities are going to only lead to, from my perspective, danger if you don't. Because
Correct.
Those curiosities are going to be put forward through their actions in ways that can cause legal repercussions.
Right. And if you think of the European model, they have fewer alcoholics in Europe than the United States does. And
But they're having wine at 16 years old.
Exactly my case. If you explain it to a young person of age 14, 15, 16, in that age, come on, that's really when I was introduced to it for the first time, okay? And I couldn't drink beer. If I had 3 beers, I would get sick. Now, later in life, I find out I have an allergic reaction to hops. So, but how do you know that at age, 16 or 15 when you're trying it, with your buddies for the first time? So, I went to the alternative and I found, wow, all of a sudden I can focus better. Needless to say, we didn't know what ADHD was in 1973 and 1974. It was always boys being boys. I'm sure you've heard that expression before.
But I didn't know that it wasn't discovered and beyond. I didn't know it was discovered beyond the 70s.
It was, and how many? And I can't tell you that one of the many therapists that I do go to, because I have a team of therapists, mental, physical, emotional, coach, career, the whole 9 yards. They all say the same thing. They can't. How many times have baby boomers been in their chair or on their couches or just talking to them, and they all have a very similar story to mine when it comes to experimenting for the first time in the 70s, in the early 70s. And, Tricky Dicky, I didn't like him then, and I certainly don't like him now because it was Dick Nixon, the Tricky Dicky. So there was this event in the 60s called Woodstock, okay? And there was a singer named Country Joe McDonald. And anyway, he had this thing called the fish cheer. And the fish cheer had nothing to do with FISH. It had to do with another four-letter word that begins with F. I'm going to go out on a limb thinking you know what the rest of the spelling of that word is. Anyway, he made fun of Tricky Dicky from Yorba Linda, and it was all anti-war. No young people and most Americans that had education and an understanding of why we were even over in Vietnam realized that this was not a war we wanted to be involved with, shouldn't have been involved with, and yet were in the very beginning. And rather than blame and point fingers, I am going to point finger at a fact that Richard Nixon had to resign because he cheated his way into the presidency in 1968 and then had to resign in 73 because it finally caught up with him, of Watergate. That's who that is. So that's my little history lesson today, Jessica. That's was my major at Tufts University, and I'm thrilled that I can share some of that with young people, including yourself. What's
particular with cannabis. So I have had that opportunity for growth my entire life. I was always running up the walls, and we couldn't figure out reasoning as to why. When I started using cannabis responsibly, it transformed my inner system, transformed my brain chemistry, realigned my brain chemistry, and now my focus has never been so in tune.
Well, I can see it. You're much more focused in this interview than I am asking the questions. So you're doing a great job. Let's talk about music for a second. Do you mind? Because besides being a photographer, you love music, right? I mean, music is part of your world.
I was collecting music on a laptop ever since I've been collecting music on laptops ever since I was 11. But when I was a kid, I figured out a way to do so. And I'd always return home from school and make sure I had my headphones on. And I've been an introvert my whole life. And through being so introverted, I always turn to music and it's bizarre, creating relationships with the music that I hear and creating relationships with the words that I heard. And it educated me so much, and in particularly hip hop.
So if you have an appreciation for hip hop, your challenge, should you choose to accept it, okay, is to share with me something that you really like and explain why you really like it, because that is one genre that I just can't I like the dance. I like hip hop dance.
Okay.
But the music, I just haven't been enlightened to. I can't, look, I'm a 70s guy. I like the Allman Brothers and the Grateful
Dead. The Doobie Brothers, everything. Yeah, I get it. My dad, when I get in the car, Soundgarden will come on, the Doobie Brothers, the Beatles, who knows? But I think that is definitely it in this case, like enlightening. There's an artist by the name of Kendrick Lamar who I always use. Have you heard of him?
Nope.
Okay, so he's probably the biggest rapper right now, period. But he's so socially conscious. He's won a Pulitzer Prize award for his lyrics. And every single album, he has built up his story of his life. He began with Good Kid, Mad City, which talks about himself growing up in poverty. And it's not only financial poverty, it's mental poverty. And the way that he lyrically portrays that energizes the listener at the end, and it leads you to think, I wonder what else happened through this guy's life. Then the next album's called Section 80, and he talks about living through Section 80 and living through that and how it's transformed his character and how it's changed him. It's so crazy how he incorporates it through music, but it's beautiful. And then he falls into his next album, which was the Pulitzer Prize winner, that is on every social issue that was happening back in 2015 and 2016. And that music, Obama was recognized by everybody because of the way that he dove deep with no filter.
And you see now there is a tie-in with music and social issues that was apparent in the '60s with people like Pete Seeger and Bob Dylan, and now Bruce Springsteen. Again, he's still a little older, but he isn't afraid to using music to share his political views or talk a little bit about being more socially conscious. And with cannabis as a political issue, cannabis as a social issue now, it really lends itself to conversation with everyone. And it also allows people like yourself and myself, it puts some pressure on us to educate others about the benefits of this plant and how it interacts with all mammals, not just humans, right?
Yeah, and with dogs and with animals, period. It is my mission. I have made this my life mission now. I continuously have built my brand through self-education. A lot of people look at it as the visual and the way that I can be appealing and different through my appearance. But beyond that, how I've educated myself on the history of the plant, and with music as well, and how that coalesces. For instance, there's so many musicians that are creating their own cannabis brands now too, and that lends an ear and that lends an eye to a whole new audience of potential consumers and potential people that will pique curiosity of how the plant can benefit them. That's huge.
Absolutely is huge. And have you seen Hamilton? The play, the Broadway?
No, I haven't. I want to so bad. Have you?
Yes, no, I saw it both not on Broadway, but in Boston, which is not Broadway, but it's the next best thing we have here, and it changed my life. First of all, I'm a history major, so I totally understood the story, and as an educator, I'm like, oh my God, this is a great way to teach history to young people. It's a tool for all teachers to watch this musical and listen to the words and see how the actors bring that out. And what you're talking about with that artist. Give me the artist's name again, because I've already forgotten who he is. Kendrick Lamar. My man Dan is here with me. He's going to remind me of that so I can download some of the music, because I actually have a service.
Oh my God. He's socially conscious, and he touches on a lot of things that you and I have already spoken about. And like you said, every individual receives information differently. And the flaw of public schooling, from my perception, is test taking and the attention that others have to bring to a test within a short amount of time. With art, with photography, with music, you're able to consume that on your time and have a deeper consumption of topics that you believe in.
That is a great philosophy and a great way to look at it too. I know that high school was not something that was kind to you. It was not something you wanted. You weren't around for graduation, basically. Am I right, Jessica?
No, I dropped out of high school. I couldn't align with what I didn't want to learn.
Interesting. Yeah, and I just went along for the ride because my goal was just to get into college, and it was a completely different time in the 70s.
Completely different. And talk about my parents and their high school experience, and from what I hear, it was entirely different. I had a lot of personal opportunities for growth during that time of my life as well, but I'm very fortunate I faced it then at a young age, because it's provided a lot of space for me to gain a lot of wisdom that I'm bringing into my years now.
Love that. Can I ask about your hair?
Yeah, definitely.
How did you come about deciding to, are they dreadlocks? Explain to me how that all kind of evolved, or is this another example, a symbol, if you will, of your embracing the Rastafarian acceptance of the plant?
Well, thank you for recognizing that. A lot of people do ask that, but it's not that. About 10 years ago, when I decided to get dreadlocks, I looked at it as an opportunity to create more space in my life. It's a representation of freedom. I didn't correlate it to cannabis back then, but it does synergistically correlate now. it was just an expression of who I was. I always admired others at that time who were able to freely express themselves colorfully through different colors, through different ways, means of expression. And my hair is my hair. And I look at it as I'm not my hair, but it's definitely a key component to my freedom and my mental and emotional freedom as well.
And it's unique to you, like everybody's hair, but in particular, this style is unique to you, and it does fit your personality. And needless to say, when I tuned into the Montel Williams show that you were on, and I saw that, and I said, "Oh my God, this is the perfect look for someone who gets it and can talk to us, and perhaps end up working with us from the Michigan area." Because I was looking for talent in your neck of the woods, and Jessica, I am very, very excited to have you on board in whatever capacity this moves towards over the next few months. Because if there's one thing, we're all in it together, aren't we?
Definitely, and I think that, like I said to you first call, I think that you have such a strong pool and a strong network. I have a strong network as well. Network as well. Having two strong networks only provides more value for the plant and provides more value for the social awareness of the plant. And having key other components, having key players on this team to continue to push this forward is only going to bring this forward in modern media as well. That is something that is lacking big time and needs to be highlighted in modern media, as is beauty is highlighted, as is fashion's highlighted, as in alcohol is highlighted.
100%. It's one of the reasons why I started Pro Cannabis Media, because of the lack of due diligence by former comrades in the media when it came to actually having conversations with cannapreneurs, the people that started their businesses in the cannabis industry early on. And then I kind of shuddered through a lot of these interviews. And I'll be honest with you, if you happen to watch, and I don't like to date these interviews, but in this particular case, I'm going to. 60 Minutes did a story on Sunday, August 2nd, on the Emerald Triangle. And I can't tell you how uncomfortable it was for me to watch a show that I have tremendous respect for. Scott Pelley is an amazing journalist. In fact, they're all great storytellers. But in this case, the word marijuana was used far too much. And I just don't understand why people don't understand why that word.
That word to me is...
Say it. It's racist. It's okay.
It's racist.
It,
It's racist.
it is.
Very racist, and that word, when I even find myself using that, you cannot say that. In comparison, not to the extremity of another word, but I think you know the route that I'm taking. Yeah. But that word being used disrespects the plant and disrespects our opportunity to bring this forward. Cannabis has allowed, that simple word has allowed us a lot of opportunity to take this into modern media platforms and to continue to see that broaden through news networks as well. I happen to see, so like I said, I'm partnered with SkyMint, and they recently just were on Fox 2 News. That's huge for Fox 2 News to feature a cannabis brand and showcase that on television to their audience of consumers of all demographics and ages.
No, I'll tell you what we need is the media to start acting more as a public servant. There's no public service campaigns that I have seen on any traditional media. When Acreage Holdings tried to run that PSA on the Super Bowl 2 years ago and it got nixed by CBS, okay, that's another thing that kind of spurred me on and said, this is wrong. These are the stories I want to tell. How many times, Jessica, have you heard, cannabis has saved my life, cannabis has changed my life?
And all the time for fellow cannabis entrepreneurs and influencers too. People day-to-day life, but they can't bring that forward because they're scared they're going to lose their day-to-day job. That's terrible. Right. On these social media platforms that are there for us to use our voice.
Right, and that's what you do. Tell us how people can follow you.
You can follow me on Instagram at Jessica X Golich, Golich, and on TikTok at Jessica Golich.
Hey, speaking of TikTok, are you concerned about what's going on politically with them right now?
No, not so much. I did raise a slight concern on Friday night as it was addressed, as I saw fellow influencers address it too. But I did follow up with a lawyer who gave me further information as to how he would be unable to pass that so suddenly, and that gave me a lot of clarity.
There you go. And that's why I always tell people when they call me for who should I invest in the cannabis space, I always say a good law firm, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be most beneficial and probably the best ROI. Because
I think that a lot of people will express their personal beliefs and opinions prior to researching. And as you know, as a journalist, it takes a lot for me to swallow some news whole.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to your stories and hopefully becoming a regular contributor to Pro Cannabis Media. Jessica Golich, it was a pleasure to chat with you, talk with you, get to know you a little bit better. And I look forward to a very long, mutually beneficial relationship, as they say.
Definitely. It's only beginning. Thank you so much for having me, Jimmy. I really appreciate it. I had a great time.
You bet. For Jessica Golich, I am Jimmy Young, the host of In the Weeds. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
We Talk Now, We Talk News, and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and our friends at clnsmedia.com and our flagship, cannabis.net. So subscribe, share, and like our videos on all the social media networks out there, including LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the WeedTube, and YouTube. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.